maravilloso espacio y gracias a quienes han hecho que un año más nos reunamos con un claro objetivo: inspirar a los jóvenes.
Those have made it possible for us to meet one more year. I'd like to talk about the importance of equality in science, innovation, and technology. We need more women in these fields, and for that, we need girls, young women, to know which other women have made it, who are benchmarks in their respective fields. It's hard to give them a face, a name, so we're going to try and make them more visible. The woman you see on the screen is Ángela Nieto, National Award in Research, 2016. She has a very relevant scientific background and great international recognition. She's been involved in a very important part of the research of aging and cancer. So let's give the floor now to Carmen Morenés, who's Director General of the Telefónica Foundation. Minister of Economy and Business, Ambassador of Sweden, Ángeles Heras, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, thank you for coming to this very important event for all of us. This third meeting of Mind the Gap, Women, Science and Innovation, tries to promote the involvement of women in science, technology, and innovation. I'd like to thank the presence with us in this week of science and innovation. We've been working with this week for more than 15 years. We have to promote the study of science, technology, etc. amongst women. It is a fact that more and more in Europe it's been calculated that there will be a lot of jobs for professions related to technology and STEM vocations. Beyond 2020, there will be hundreds of thousands of jobs related to telecommunications and technology. But women need to get ready to have access to those jobs. That is why at Fundación Telefónica we like to promote projects of this kind, and we want all men and women to acquire the necessary skills to have access to the labor market, which is increasingly technological. We can see that in Europe today, only 33% of the scientific community is made up by women. And if we talk about engineering and mathematics, it's even less than 30%. So that's why today we want to work on an inspiring model where women can show that there's a place for us. Technology needs us just like we women need technology. Sweden and other Nordic countries are an example for everyone, and they are pioneers in bridging the gap. They've understood a long time ago that women are necessary in all fields. That is why the Swedish Embassy is promoting this meeting today, and have seen that having women leading these fields has an impact on their lives. So today we will talk about women who will become leaders in these fields, who will be a benchmark for a stable job future, employment future. And now we need to encourage young women who are about to decide what they want to be trained of. So let's hope this is a very inspiring evening for all of us. Microphone, please. We have to put an end to the digital gap amongst women. Mind the Gap is an initiative started by the Swedish Embassy in Spain. We will give the floor now to the ambassador, Teppo Taurianen.
Bueno, por mi parte también.
I would also like to welcome you to this seminar, Mind the Gap, Women, Science and Innovation. I would first like to thank the Telefónica Foundation and Carmen Morenés for collaborating with us and welcoming us in this very nice setting. Minister of Economy and Business, Ángeles Heras, Manager of the Foundation for Knowledge, Madrid plus D. Thank you very much to you all for your presence and for coordinating such an excellent panel on such a relevant topic. I'm happy to see there are lots of people in the audience. This is proof of the interest in the topic, but also the need to keep emphasizing to promote the involvement of women in science, technology and innovation. That is why we organize this third edition of Mind the Gap within the framework of the Science Week in Madrid. We want to contribute to break the gender gap and promote the presence of women in science, technology and innovation. In this third edition of Mind the Gap, we'd like to add one more goal, which is a diversity perspective in general, to create more opportunities for a diverse society. Equality and diversity not only contribute positively to competitiveness, labor market efficiency, but they also contribute to creating a more creative, innovative, and cohesive society where the potential of the whole society is taken advantage of. Sweden is one of the most egalitarian countries in the world, but we still face the same challenges as the rest of Europe. We've heard some of the numbers, and this is also the case in Sweden. For example, when it comes to entrepreneurs, 7 out of 10 entrepreneurs are men in Europe. Women account only for 33% of the scientific community, and 30% of people who work in science, technology, and engineering are women. And on a worldwide basis, the technology sector is the least represented by women in their boards. There are several studies that show that companies that have an equitable presence of women in board of directors are more successful in economic terms, for example, profitability and return on investment. Reducing the gender gap, promoting equality and diversity is a requirement for sustainable development to be able to fully take advantage of the innovative capacity of a country. The Swedish government is working hard on this, both in Sweden and internationally. We were the first country in the world to develop a feminist international policy, and we're happy to see that other countries have decided to follow the same road.
Exterior feminista es
One of the objectives of this policy is to say that resources should be used in the best possible way, covering the whole population. The participation of women in the labor market is essential in global growth terms. We need to attract women, but also men, to those industries where there's a predominance of only one gender, to take advantage of the ideas and potential of the other gender. Gender equality, empowerment of all women and girls is also part of a 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Our societies need to continue to face fundamental challenges to achieve real and effective equality in all areas of life. Here we have a global goal for sustainable development in the 2030 agenda, promoting decent jobs and inclusive growth. We know that gender wage gap is 23% in the world, and the rate of participation of women is only 63% in working terms. Men were 94%. In order to reduce this gap, it is essential that we develop policies that facilitate work-life balance involving both genders. For Sweden, one of the main challenges in the last few years has been to take advantage of the opportunities of an increasingly diverse society. The risk of losing valuable competition is there. Companies need to employ using diversity and equality criteria. The Swedish agency is developing all kinds of methods to help companies increase their recruitment community. Science is key for the future. Before I conclude and give the floor to the next speakers who will give us inspiring and motivational speeches, I'd like to thank our collaborators who've been with us from the beginning. ABB, Ericsson, AstraZeneca Foundation, and Securitas. Thanks to your commitment and support, it's been possible to go ahead with this project. I should also like to thank the Foundation for Knowledge Madrid +D for allowing us to participate in this week of science and innovation. This year, we're working for inclusive science. This meeting offers a platform where we can share experiences and working methods to promote equality and diversity in science, mathematics, technology, and engineering. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, embajador.
Thank you, Ambassador. You spoke about the policies of reconciling, and Spain is a model country in issues of equality, a data that I think is interesting. Sweden was the first country in the world to implement this type of policies in Sweden in 1974, so we still have a long way to go and a lot to learn from that country. We're going to put a face on researcher women. Let's see if we can see the next one. She is Nuria Oliver. You can see her on the screen. She was engineer in 2018 of the Engineer of the Year. She's one of the greatest experts in artificial intelligence in our country. A few months ago, we had an interview with her, and she didn't let us. She was rather asking us. She was saying how much innovation is being thrown away due to the lack of diversity, and what are the opportunities that we women are losing because we are using this technology that has not been designed by women. With those questions, we're going to go over to the next intervention, and with a person who is going to open formally this session, a person who never loses the gender perspective in her interventions and who always claims the role of the woman and the fight for equality in the institutions. She says sentences as poverty of the retired people has the face of a woman. I leave you with the Minister of Economy, Nadia Calviño.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon to all of you. men, women. I would first of all like to thank the Telefónica Foundation and the other organizers for giving me the opportunity to participate in this opening session. As we heard a minute ago, and as the Swedish ambassador said as well, by the way, I love the title, Mind the Gap. It's really impressive to see that so many people are interested in this topic. One would think that, well, this is something that only interests a few, but that is not the case. So I'm very happy to hear that. The objective of this event is to try and inspire young entrepreneurs and scientists and explain the importance of having no gap in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think it's a fantastic idea. Let me make a confession. Some years ago, I participated in a meeting of ministers of the Treasury and other high officials, and I was shocked to see that a deputy minister said, "We are a feminist government," referring to a Swedish government. Then another minister said it, and then someone else said it. I was shocked to hear it. I never thought that one day I would have the honor of being part of a feminist government in my country, and is one of the things that I'm most proud of when we talk internationally. It's great to see that Spain also has a feminist government and that these topics are not considered as minor. We spoke about the low percentage of women in science. The deputy minister will give us some figures later on. Technology jobs in the hands of women is only 15%, less than in 2006. So it's not only that we're not making progress, but rather we are moving backwards. The gender gap, the digital gender gap is increasing. But we need equality in these sectors for economic progress in our country. That's why it's one of the most important things in our political agenda. Some decades ago, access of women to higher education was limited. Presence of women in managerial jobs was very difficult. It's true that we've made a lot of progress in this field, but there's still a lot to be done. When we talk about the digital gap, since the beginning of the crisis, we've taken some steps backwards. There are many international indices that place Spain in a very poor position regarding the gender gap. We're far from where we were in 2007, and even further than the Nordic countries. And this gap is particularly true in the field of science and technology. So eradicating this gap should be one of our priorities. First of all, for equity or equality reasons, there should be no wage or salary gap greater than 12%. It's not fair that 70% in Spain who receive the minimum wage are women. The fact that many telecom companies don't have any women in their board. These are recent studies. But this gap, this wage gap, perpetuates economic differences between men and women. I've said this over and over again. Poverty at retirement, low pensions are mostly in the hands of women. And women, therefore, they carry this gap all throughout their professional and retired life. And I think it's also good to have a fairer and better society. The gross domestic product of Spain would be 15% higher if we put an end to this wage gap. So we need to take advantage of this potential product. We need to activate all the resources of our society. We cannot afford to miss the talent of 50% of our society. It's not rational from an economic point of view. Besides, women are often forced to work on a part-time basis to take care of their children and elders. And this means that they not only earn less and they buy less, but this also affects our welfare state because it reduces the collection of taxes and contributions to the social security system. And there's something else the ambassador mentioned, something that is difficult to quantify, but evidence shows that it's true. Diversity is an asset in boards of directors. Having people of different origins, and I'm not referring just to gender, but geography, background, points of view. Well, this diversity is wealth, and that's how we should see it. So we have to promote diversity, especially in the decision-making part, because it's not just a social asset, but an economic one. In 2017, women were more than half of university graduates, but very few graduated in technology. And in digital technologies, even less. And that is reflected in our labor market. It means that women don't have the possibility to contribute to that progress, but also they may be unable to have access to future jobs. As Mrs. Morenez said, there are hundreds of thousands of jobs that will be created that will be related to STEM. So if we do not participate as women, the gender gap will increase. We cannot miss a single minute because reality is not going to wait, and we may miss the train and never be able to catch it. That is why we need to promote the presence of women. That's why it's so important for young women to have a mirror where they can see their reflection. Those pictures of excellent scientists who are a reference, a role model. When girls start to think about themselves at 6, 7 years of age, they should have these different role models instead of those we see in the media. I think we have to give an alternative to these girls and not just those of society and the media. As an economist, I'd like to mention another important woman, the Nobel laureate this year for economy, Esther Duflo, who's made impressive, groundbreaking contributions in the field of poverty reduction and inequality based on experimental methods. She is the second woman to get the Nobel Award for Economics in the whole history of the prizes. I'm not going to dwell any longer because I think you will learn most from the panels. I won't be able to stay, but I will get a summary. And as for the future, I believe that our country needs to continue with an economic policy, the one we have always followed in our government. Sustainability, fair taxation, social awareness, to have a strong and cohesive society that can face the challenges our country faces. And number 3, structural reforms, an agenda of reforms that helps us raise our heads and that allows us to have a vision of how we want our country to be like in the future. And in this agenda of reforms, we need to give priority to science, innovation, research and development, so that in spite of our budget restrictions, we can align the percentage of public and private expenditure. It's not expenditure, it's investment in research and development, both public and private, so that we can close that other gap we have and be more aligned with the EU average, so that we can start a digital transformation in SMEs, a digitization plan, so that not only all people in Spain will be able to take advantage of a digital revolution in their profession, but so that everyone is an active citizen and understand what's behind those algorithms, instead of being mere puppets of a system that they don't understand. We need to make sure that this digitization process puts citizens in the center, and in that center, women. That's the goal of today's discussion. I think we're taking a step forward by identifying that this is an issue and that we have to do something to solve it. It must be a priority goal for all of us. And I will end on a positive note. I think we have great assets to be optimistic about the future. We have an economy that is growing in a more balanced and sustainable way. We have a society that is extraordinary from the point of view of talent. We have excellent universities with departments and research centers that are amongst the best in the world. We have institutions that are excellent in the world of science and research. We have a government that is fully convinced and dedicated, so that this digital revolution will help citizens. And we have civil society that is committed, that understands the importance of this. So I'd like to end congratulating you on this initiative. I wish you the best. And as Carmen Morenés said, science needs you. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, ministra.
Thank you very much, Minister. I keep two things. One, data. The GDP would increase by 15%, and we can, if we close the gender gap. And one sentence: equality is fundamental for the progress of our country. And we follow other scientists. The next one that I would like to introduce to you is Guadalupe Savi, a great scientist who is here in our country. Dr. Fabio is leading since many years the research team of the CENIC that studies the relationship between obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disorders, and cancer. Among the her last papers and last work, last discoveries, is the relationship between the incidence of liver cancer, because it's why this type of cancer is greater in men than in women. And we now go to the next item on our agenda in this afternoon with a speaker who is declared passionate by the opportunities of the new technologies, especially the Internet of Things. He is expert in digital transformation. He works as a director of projects in the National Program of Innovation, Strategic Innovation for the Internet of Things. He's a man, his name is Olle Bergdahl. He's going to speak about diversity, inclusion, and its relation with the strategy for the innovation. Thank you, Olle.
Good evening, everyone, and what a great introduction to this program. I love science, I love innovation, and I also love equal opportunities for everyone. I will today discuss and show you some opportunities working with diversity and inclusion, and building that as a strategy for driving innovation. I'm representing Uppsala University, and that's Nordic region's oldest university. It's a top-ranked university. It's a broad research university with 3 interdisciplinary domains. We have research within humanities and social science, research within medicine and pharmacy, research within science and technology. And all this is brought together in Uppsala University. Uppsala is a town that is located near Sweden's capital, Stockholm. It's about 30 minutes by train north of Stockholm. A beautiful city, so you should go there. I also representing a part of the Swedish innovation ecosystem. Sweden has 17 strategic innovation programs. And common for these programs are there are areas that are targeting that Sweden should work with to increase international competitiveness and working with the innovation project for societal good. And also innovation projects to gain new businesses. Specifically, I work with the project, innovation project called Internet of Things, or Internet de las Cosas, as I understand it. It's named in Spanish. And that is basically physical devices or things that's embedded electronic and software with sensors and connectivities. And by adding connectivities to physical objects, new services can be created for societal good. It can be a range of different applications. It could be for health improvements, environmental improvements, smart city improvements, and things that is around us in our everyday lives. And I think it's increasingly important that we work with diversity and inclusion when we work with innovation, and specifically in the area with digitalization and technology. It's important because it has a great impact on our everyday lives and the society as such. And we need to bring more creativity in the innovation process, and we need to include even more in perspectives when we're working with solutions for better goods. So I should also give you some statistics. Sweden is ranked as the second most innovative country worldwide. And many good things are happening right now. We are on a good way, but still there are so much more to be done. And to maintaining the international competitiveness and also be even better for the future when it goes to innovation. And the world is changing faster than ever before. And we have these, what we call exponential technologies. It could be 3D printing, drones, robotics, artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, and so on. And to be able to innovate and to be able to adopt to change, we need to bring in more perspectives. We need more diverse teams working with innovation. Homogeneous teams, they are very good in working with things that are predictable and things that maybe are repetitive, things that has done before. But when we're working with innovation, we're working with radical new things. We need to bring in new ideas, new perspectives, and that is why diversity is so increasingly important. So I asked myself a couple of questions. Can diversity be more than just something to comply with? Is it more than just checking the diversity or gender box? Can diversity be a real competitive advantage? And how is this going to translate into business models? So I was very keen to read this study that was made by Boston Consulting Group. And it's a study that focused on diversity and innovation. And this survey, they asked more than 1,700 companies across 8 countries. And they asked a couple of questions. The study was to investigate in the relationship between multiple aspects of management diversity and the innovation outcome. This study has been published by Harvard Business Review, and it has also been highlighted by the World Economic Forum. So I think they have done it in a very good way. The dimensions of diversity that was measured and captured in this study was 6 dimensions linked to diversity: gender, nationality, career path, industry background, age, and education. And for the economic and innovation thing, they looked in this study about what they call innovation revenue. And innovation revenue is the percentage of total revenue from new products and services that is launched over the past 3 years. So it's a key performing indicators that pretty much saying how innovative a company are and how successful in innovation the company are. And the result is very, very interesting. So you see on the left hand is the companies with below average diversity scores. They have a 26% average innovation revenue. But you can see on the right hand are companies with above average diversity scores. And they perform 19% higher innovation revenues. Here is another graph that is showing pretty much the same thing, and you see the distribution about the total diversity index and the share of innovation revenues from products, and how this result correlates. And in this study, they worked with the Technical University of Munich to analyzing this statistics. And they can say that all 6 dimensions of diversity has statistically significant correlation with innovation, both individually and collectively. And the effect, I think it's very interesting because the effect of different dimensions of diversity were the most additive. So combining different dimensions of diversity will increasing performance radically. I think one other thing about this report was very interesting, and I want to highlight it. This is the share of female managers grouped into 3 different categories. You have 0 to 10%, 11 to 20, and above 20. And what this graph is telling us is that small numbers don't count. There is a threshold of 20% when we can see a significant impact on innovation. And this means that only having a small share of female in management won't really make a difference. But when we see an impact in the threshold of 20%, innovation take off. So the conclusion is a broad-based approach to diversity that values multiple aspects of diversity is the most beneficial in terms of innovation outcome. So if we say diversity maybe be the first thing, but I think we also need to bring in the perspective of inclusion. Working with diversity can be beneficial for sure, but the really value will happen when you're combining diversity with inclusion. That will unlock the really power of diversity. I think most of us at some points in our lives have felt excluded. Maybe in the school, maybe at a party, maybe at the sports club or somewhere else. So I think we need to revisit this feeling of being excluded and bring in the perspective of authentic inclusion. What I mean is that we need to create an inclusive work environment, and that is not an easy thing. We need to change the culture. And we can, requiring this cultural shift will be not something that can be delegated, for example, to a HR department of the company. It need to be brought in to the day-to-day business, and it needs to be carried out by the managers in all levels and also the workforce in all levels. We have done so in the program of Internet of Things by defining our strategy. This was a combination of a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach, where we combining the work with formulating a strategy. And this is a strategy to increase diversity and also increasing gender equality in our innovation projects in Sweden. So what we did is that we did this in a collaborative manner, because it's not only just to formulate a document and put it somewhere. It's need to be action linked to this document. So we did it in a collaborative manner with all our projects in our innovation portfolio, and we did this together with them. And our strategy, the thing about our strategy is it should be very simple. It should be easy to understand by everyone, and it should be used by everyone. And the core of our strategy can be summarized in actually 3 words: think big, act small, and start now. I think we should not do things too complicated. That is one of my main messages here tonight. I think we should be very simple in putting these tools into action. What we also did is we built what we call the toolbox. It's a set of goals for equality and inclusion. We have a package called skills and knowledge that we're working with competence, increasing competence in all levels in our projects and elsewhere. We have a shared language. We have a common understanding of why this is important, and that is also crucial for success. We amplifying best practices. When someone has done a really good thing in our project, we bring this into the program management, and we build communication, and we celebrate success and amplifying things that are really good. We're working together with a company called Agender to do this. And it was started in Stockholm by 2008. And Agender takes a holistic approach towards integrating diversity in the core of business and innovation. They have a package that is very powerful, tools and also education. So now people from our projects are in this education to get better knowledge, and to also to use this platform for the diversity and coaches in our network in a very good way. Here you can see a collection of all these things within the platform, and it is certainly a holistic view. Teams and leadership, customer interaction, communication, management and capability, recruitment, that is so very important, but also we need to take into consideration well-being. Here are some examples of the content within each of these things in our platform. And here are some other examples I can show you. And since I'm from the university, I think it's very, very important that we work in a scientific manner. We should use scientific results in driving change. We should also be very, very good in using data to work with change management, specifically within this area. The norm engineer word might seem a little bit odd to you. Norms are everywhere around us, and norms can often be very good. It builds society. A norm is an expected behavior in a certain context. But norms can also sometimes be excluded. And being aware of the norms in the organization help us to drive change. The norm engineering field code is a example of code of conduct and how it helps us to navigate, and it helps us to remind ourselves when we're working with change. I have collected some really nice recommended reading. I think you should read the McKinsey report that is quite recently from 2018, Delivering Through Diversity. I also strongly recommend the Boston Consulting Group study that I presented earlier, How and Where Diversity Drives Financial Performance, since I think it's very important that we build in diversity into the business case when we're working with change. But I will also recommend you this book, A Good Time to Be a Girl, written by Dame Helena Morrissey. I had the opportunity to meet her at OECD Forum in Paris last spring, and she is very inspiring, and she writes about gender equality. She writes about diversity, not as a problem, but as an opportunity. And she is also a business financing in the business financing sector. So I think it's the perspective also how this can be beneficial to economic growth is also a very, very interesting perspective in this book. And she also brings in this, she is the founder also of the 30% Club. I don't know if you recognize that before, but the 30% Club is promoting and driving the question of increasing female leadership in boardrooms and in executive rooms. So I think it's a very, very good book. Strongly recommended. So I will finish this speak by one of my favorite quotes. Diversity drives innovation. But when we limit who can contribute, we in turn limit what problems we can solve. And I think that's pretty much summarize what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Ula Beridol. Muy, muy interesante su abordaje.
Thank you. Very interesting, your approach on diversity. Please allow me to make a recommendation within added to those that he has mentioned on the issue of diversity. One of the topics that is mentioned so often, the BlackRock, I think, talked about that, of the advantages given by to the company's biodiversity beyond gender equality. We are going to follow now with one of our other scientists, women. In this case, also in an interview in the FA agency, she reminded that the girls start underestimating their intelligence around the age of 6. She's neurobiologist. She's Mara Diersen, as you can see. She's one of the few women who is directing one of the research groups at the front line in the Center of Genomic Regulation of Barcelona. We are going to give this space. Our speakers can come up here. We will have space and the voice to, we will give space and voice to 4 women of different environments, the company, medicine, or technology. They are going to give us their vision on the equation women, science, and innovation. I leave you with Susana Mañueco, Director of Social Innovation and International Relations from COTEC, and she's the moderator of our next roundtable. Hello, thank you very much for being here. It's fantastic to see so many people eager to listen to different voices in order to speak about this topic. Thank you very much to the Embassy and the Foundation Telefónica for having us here, and we feel at home, and all of you who have contributed to organize this very interesting meeting. Before starting, I would like to introduce those, and before introducing those 3 fantastic women, I wanted to give the idea of why this panel. Maybe the technicians can show a special slide. An event on science, innovation, and technology. Without this equality angle, we will be talking about scenarios of the future, where we talk about digitalization, big data, algorithms. We always are projecting towards the future. And thinking about how to introduce this panel, I thought, why don't we do the same, but with this gender equality approach? Rather than speaking about the future, let's see how in the past they did project the future from science, technology, and innovation, because that's the sector that we are addressing to now. And I bring those pictures in order to share the reflection with you. Here we have a utopia, and in the lower part of dystopia. In the upper picture was published in a paper, in an article in El País on an issue that is the speculative business. This picture, the quality is not too good, but I was unable to find the original one, was published in Life in 1950. And it's a projection of how life would improve thanks to technological advances. As we can see, there is a tablet, incredible, that they knew it was going to come, a flat screen, a high-tech kitchen. And some technological advances, they have been right. But what they have failed in that world that they wanted, in that projection of the world, is including us, women. As you can see here, the man comes home in a helicopter, and the lady is just making the bread for dinner. And the other lady that is there is buying online a very nice suit. So as you can see, when they talked about projections and technological advances, the woman was not participating too much. And here I bring another picture. Apologize, we can't see it too well, from Blade Runner. Blade Runner is the film that we could see in 1982. It's a dystopia of the future, as we know very well. We are in the future of Blade Runner right now, because the future he projected was November 2019. So, although it was a dystopia, it also stated very clearly the role of the woman in front of these technological advances. If you've seen Blade Runner, you know that the female actors are replicants, and replicants that were designed by men, meeting very clear roles of caregivers, sexual satisfaction, fantasy, etc. And the woman is not occupying other roles in this film. So I believe that it is quite clear that we have 3 fantastic examples here with us of women who were breaking that self-fulfilled prophecy. In spite of all the hurdles they have found on their way, they were not included when this future was projected. So I'm going to introduce you now. You are fantastic. We've got here Montse Pascual, telecommunications engineer. She has been working 12 years in Edison in the sector of mobile phones, communication. half of these networks with complete network solutions and more than 20 operators in the world in 15 different countries. She works in Ericsson, She is outstanding in Japan and the United Kingdom in her work. You consider London as your second and third country. She occupies a role in the commercial area and one of the most important accounts of Ericsson in Spain, combining this with her active participation in programs in order to encourage the role of the woman in. And now that we know this, I'm going to ask the question the same to the three. I learned it here in this house, in Espacio Telefónica, to know you slightly better. When you were a girl, what were you dreaming about that you wanted to be when you were grown up? I didn't have a dream. I didn't want to be an engineer. But it is true that I liked mend the toys when they were broken. My father was a sort of MacGyver. He was able to arrange everything. And the fantastic car that was driven alone, the man who spoke in his phone, fantastic car, the Return to the Future, all that was fantastic for me. And I was wondering, could this be done in the future? I would like to know how, or I would like to be the one who invented that. And then, when I was slightly older, at the age of 12, 13, my sister, who is elder, she started studying telecommunications engineering, came home with her friends, that they did lab practices, and I loved what they were doing, that is true. And a little bit later, my sister was the landmark for me. She started working, and she came one day home with the first mobile phone that had been invented. It was an Ericsson phone. It was enormous. It was like a brick. I remember that you could change the different keys, the keyboard, and you could go anywhere and you could speak on the phone to anyone. And how can this be done? So I think this is what made me make this first step. And looking back, now we talk to our watch, and the cars are standalone. I mean, they are driven by themselves. In the past, things that were impossible are possible today. And I believe that this is what has made me make the decision that there were things that were impossible and think that tomorrow or within a few years they can become possible. This is fascinating for me. Thank you, Monse. Dolores Isla is head of the Department of Medical Oncology of the Clinical University Hospital Lozano Blesa in Zaragoza, specialist in medical oncology since 1993. Apart from, she studied medicine, member of several scientific societies, and the American Society of Clinical Oncology and the European Society of Medical Oncology. She is also part of the board of the Association for Cancer Research, Lung Cancer in Women, and the Commission of Women for Oncology of the Spanish Society of Medical Oncology. She is author of more than 200 papers, mainly focused on cancer research, lung cancer. Bolola, welcome. Thank you. I asked you the same question. What were you dreaming of when you were a little girl? Well, since, as far as I remember, when I was a small little girl, I wanted to be important. I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be in the society. I wanted to work, of course, and I wanted to have the most relevant job I could ever had. As far as I remember, that's what I was thinking. That was how it was. And then the way of starting was studying hard, and I really was studying very much. I had very good scores, and I realized that I liked much more sciences than humanities, and that's why I decided to study medicine. That I thought allowed me to reach the goal of being present in the society in a job that could be relevant. And medicine allows you to help people as well. So, and this was also that I always have liked to do since I was a little girl. So that's my path since I was small until now. And you have achieved that. Well, I have achieved at least something, or at least you shouldn't overdo things. I haven't yet finished, of course. I still can reach higher goals, that I still have a long track to go. Mercedes Yule is the global responsible of the area of energy economics in the power consulting group of ABB. During more than 12 years' experience in the energy sector, she has been working with companies as KPM, BNGL, advising the main companies in economic regulatory issues and market at the international level. At present, she combines her work with her active collaboration in associations as ANMR. The Spanish Association of Women in Energy works to obtain the presence of women in all the areas of the company has to be balanced. And we, ABB Network, initiatives that promote gender equality within ABB. Welcome, Mercedes. Thank you, Susanna. Tell you, what were you dreaming about when you were a little girl? I think that you are going to laugh at me. I wanted to be a little bit of everything. One day I wanted to be a hairdresser, another day a researcher, another day a scientist, and the next day a teacher. Well, what I want to tell you is maybe the funniest profession that I love ancient Egypt. I was fascinated. I was reading all the time about that topic. So at that time I wanted to be archaeologist. And I wanted so hard that I decided not only did I want to be that, but I wanted to be able to build my own pyramid. And my sister, instead of being a landmark, she was the elder sister that is changing your plans, told me. I had to have a lot of money to build a pyramid. They only employed men, so I couldn't have that goal. My endeavor was even greater. So I spent 1 year looking for how to become rich and be able to do that. That was my goal in life. I kept on, I became grown up, and I had the family that supported me in everything I wanted to do. I'm very curious to learn, to know more, to understand why things happen, and the physics career seemed to me a very good alternative. And the energy sector that is changing all the time is also the path in order to reach where I wanted. This anxiety of learning and apart from the anecdote of become rich, the rest I have been able to achieve. So we have 3 women that in fact broke that utopia, dystopia that was made of the future, and that's what it's all about. What we want now is for you to share, since your personal experience, which has been your evidence, your experience throughout your career. We are going to touch about different issues as key that has been identified as key in order to enhance the presence of women in innovation, science and technology. One of them has been mentioned before, the importance of enhancing the visibility of women in this field. Patricia has been sharing with us stories and realities of very important women in science. And here we have one of them, Lola. You have become a landmark in such a difficult field as the medical oncology. I wanted to ask you, what are the landmarks or references in the hospital were important for you during the development of your professional career? And do you think that those examples motivated you to guide you towards medical oncology, if they have been maintained, or if this has changed now for the young women who want to start like you did? The specialty that I have, in which I work, is incredible. It's one of the most beautiful in medicine. Very innovative, very dynamic. The research is absolutely fundamental, and it's at the reach of our hand within our hospitals, in our departments. And this allows us to offer the patients a greater amount and quality of life, change their prognosis. It's fascinating. So I'm lucky with this specialty in which I work, and in which I have been able to become head of my department. I had some examples when I started. I chose some successful professionals whom I came very close to learn from them. Especially what I learned was that apart from the fact that they were brilliant and people who were special and geniuses, they did work very hard. and they dedicated a lot of effort to their profession, many hours. Some were men, some were women. Maybe women more than examples. As mentors, they have been rather more companions and we have developed together in this profession at the same time. And I have seen that the male examples and female examples is not exactly the same, because from each one of them you learn something different. From women, and we are speaking about women here today, what I learned has been emotional intelligence, as a summary, a lot of organizational capacity, sensitivity in our work, and that empathy is easier among women. But male mentors and female mentors, and especially the issue of the effort. I think that for the new generations, well, they come with the luck that the technologies are helping them already. I think they don't know what is not having technologies. I have been working for 30 years, and I started when the internet was just starting, and that was fantastic. It helped us very much. And then little by little we've seen how these technologies helps us more and more. And the medicine students that start now in the world of medicine, they have all that already. But the effort and the need of working and dedication, this is absolutely fundamental as well. This doesn't change, and this is fundamental in order to be able to reach skills and merit, and this is the path for success. So this is my mission and everything that refers to my examples. Now you're probably a mentor yourself, and I believe that we have to have mentors always. I think that nobody is born knowing everything, and you have to look at, to be right when you choose a mentor, you have to look at somebody that can be an example and follow him or follow her and learn from them. And well, I believe that it's very important that they exist in your professional life.
Monse, in your case, you chose engineering. And as the minister said before, the data about the presence of women is concerning. There's little presence in engineering, but in IT and telecom, it's even lower.
Que se plantean es evaluar las características.
One of the solutions proposed is to evaluate the career these young men and women choose when they're in school, and explore the potential reasons of why they choose one degree instead of another. From your experience, why do you think that the telecom industry is seen as a world of men? Well, there's one fundamental reason, which is social influence. If we tell everyone, think about an astronaut, you will think about a man immediately. If you say, let's call the IT guy, it's always a guy. And in all TV shows, in all films, it's always a TV guy. So that means that girls absorb this information and they don't see themselves in those roles, because all they see is men in those roles. And that's a problem. The lack of a role model.
Y otra razón también que es muy importante, y es una falta de información.
Another important reason is lack of information. Lack of information of what it is to be an engineer. In some professions, it's easier to have an idea of what they do, a teacher, a lawyer. But engineers, people don't know what they do. So because of that lack of information, there are some biases. I'm sure a lot of people think that an engineer is a person who spends 10 hours in front of a computer, who fixes things in the cloud, something we don't know what it is, and who uses a lot of acronyms. And it's true. But it's true, but only one of many options. You may work in engineering from a marketing point of view, or you can be a professor of technology or work in sales.
Pues yo lo que hago está muy lejos de ese estereotipo del que estaba hablando.
What I do is far from that stereotype that I described. We work with our clients, Ericsson, for example. We look for a project to develop a service, good quality of service for end users. End users are all of us, so there's a social part to it. You go back to Ericsson, where you find a lot of technical teams. You think, you design. A project may last months or years, lots of challenges. Working as a team is key here. And all these careers give you the option of working with international teams. People of 5, 6 different nationalities. And that's not only professional development. It's huge, it's great. You change as a person. So something that came out of nothing, suddenly you see there are millions of users, clients who are satisfied, and you feel part of the digital era, as the minister said, digital transformation, the connected society. So you feel useful, you feel good, and this is something we have to talk about. We have to talk about the broad range of possibilities offered by these areas, and the fact that it's good not only professionally but socially. So at the end of the day, we have to put an end to this situation where there are girls that, because of social influence and because of a lack of information, they don't take the step and study these degrees or work in these industries, because there are no female examples. And when you ask, think about an astronaut, people always think of a man. And how do you think this can be changed? Well, first, information campaigns. We have to give a comprehensive vision of what an engineer is. Some people think that, well, when women are going to decide what degree they're going to study, they choose something that is more social. But engineering can be social. You just have to find the social side to it. And you can see that medical breakthroughs need technology, and it's a social thing. Improving quality of life needs technology. In natural catastrophes, there's technology in the solutions that are used to alleviate them. And do it not only from advertising in the media, on television. No, a lot can be done in universities, for example, and at school. Ericsson participates with the City Girls project. The experience is even better for women than for men. And we tell those girls who come what it means to work and what we do. We don't force anyone to study engineering, but the day they make a decision, we wanted them to do it with all the information. And we have to try and put an end to stereotypes, jokes, TV shows. And from companies, I think we can do a lot. Following the Swedish example, I think it should be our guide. Ericsson is a Swedish company. We have a goal for the end of 2020 to have more women in managerial jobs. We've already achieved 30%, and we're happy. So that's something we need to promote. You cannot have 50-50, because if no women graduate from those degrees, you cannot do it, but at least approach that percentage. Another way to achieve what you said is the development of networks, groups and organizations that promote the presence of women in this sector. Mercedes, you're a member of a Spanish Association of Women in Energy, EMENER. The goal is to make sure that the presence of women is balanced in all areas in the company, and to have a diversity, improving the presence of women in STEM. What made you take the step to collaborate with this association? Tell us a bit more about this activity. As Lola said, I was going to call you Lolly. As Lola said, mentors are very important. And I was lucky recently because a person who's always been a role model for me offered to be my mentor. A month ago, this person asked me, the most important thing for you is to have a purpose. And I said, I do have a purpose. I want everything I do, everything I learn, everything I grow to be useful for something else, not just to make money for the company or for myself. So I work with Energies Without Frontiers, and also when Embajada was created, I thought it was a great opportunity. It started at a metro station. Our director said, I want to set up something so that the presence of women in the energy sector and in the rural world is balanced. So the two of us and 13 other people started to work on it. 2 years of conversations during which we evaluated the reasons for no equality to exist. A year ago, we're celebrating our first anniversary. We presented our idea to EMENER, saying we have to work at all levels, and we have to do it with two very important things. We're not here to fight. We're here to work together in the achievement of something. We don't want to be exclusive. Our association has both men and women as members, because men are our workmates, our bosses, our husbands. So we have to work together, otherwise we will not succeed as women. With those two principles, basic principles, EMENER tries to achieve something. For example, we've created an area for education. We go to schools to help generate female role models to make the energy sector more friendly for boys and girls. They have a very negative idea of energy because bills are high at home, or because we associate engineering to men. So that is fundamental. You have to build from the bottom up, because most of the unconscious biases come from the times when we're very young. Mercedes, I want to ask something. Do you think there's any specific phase when those decision levers are basic? Childhood, teenage?
Es decir, yo he estado viendo un programa muy recientemente, creo que se llama Superhéroes.
It's very clear. I saw a program recently. I think the name is Superheroes and Princesses. I watched it online, and they record 8-year-old boys and girls. And at that age, when you ask them what they want to do, they want to take care of dolls, and the boys, they want to be firefighters. So they already have this bias. when they're so young. So it means we have to start earlier. And in fact, we've started with boys and girls as young as possible. And then you have to continue as they grow older. Because when they're older, they think, no, I don't like this company, or I don't like that because it's for men.
Parece ser que hay, claro, distintas destrezas cada...
It seems that there are different skills. Each of us has different skills. And there aren't many women students in engineering schools because there are few women who see they're capable of doing it or who like it. But why? They may like other fields better, other degrees.
¿Prohíbe ir a una carrera?
Nunca.
Do we forbid anyone from studying one degree or another? Well, maybe you have to move to another town, but there's no prohibition. I don't know. When there's such a huge difference, do you think it's just because society pushes women not to study engineering? I never thought of studying engineering. I thought it was not for me. But maybe if there had been people around you, or if 80% of students of engineering were women, you might have thought about it. You don't see examples around you. You don't see role models. Yes, it's true. Role models are important. And women have come to the labor market late. Women my mother's age didn't work. But now, all the mothers of my daughter's friends, they all work. So there's a whole generation gap.
Están cambiando.
Ahí te voy a decir dos cosas. Por un lado,
first of all, you're right. There may come a time when we will be able to choose freely, and there will continue to be a difference. But in toy catalogs, you have the blue side and the pink side, and you don't see building blocks on the pink side. It's not just that we're different. There's a small or big step we have to take so that we come to the point of saying, look, everything being equal, we're still different. I'm responsible for the study area of M&R, and I may one day come to the conclusion that boys and girls are different, but not that different. And that difference makes us study different things. And there are no women in STEM because in equal conditions we don't want to do it. But at least we have to be sure that there are equal conditions. Being different is a source of wealth, is an asset. But there's evidence in the studies that girls, they don't feel they're in equal conditions and they don't choose STEM degrees. Also, we're not brave enough to go for those high goals. There are very few women who aspire to a top management position where there's a lot of responsibility. And the fact that we don't have true work-life balance goes against women because they think they won't be able to do everything. But this is also a gap, a delay, and I'm sure in future generations it will change. But for the time being, women are not ambitious enough or brave enough to aspire to a managerial job. I have a question for you, Monse.
Well, in view of the scenario, we talk very much about the consequences of the future of automation, and now it is a fad to talk about the soft skills. I apologize for saying words in English. It's difficult to translate them sometimes, says the speaker. For many years, they have regretted the scarcity of workers that are not. Some are to improvise solutions, the unforeseen problems, increase teamwork. There is scientific evidence that shows that women obtain consistently higher, better results in the emotional competencies and social skills correlated with the affection than men. But in our sector, the same thing happens. Have you seen that in your daily life? Yes? Yes, certainly. Well, I believe that the first thing is not everybody that the only thing that is required is a technical knowledge. No, that's not true. We need other things as well that are linked to what you have been saying, not only at the gender level. I refer to what the minister said. I think we all agree in that diversity of age, of ethnic group, culture and gender, of course, is a key aspect and produces results that are very satisfactory at the team level, at the company level. Well, at the end of the day, this is an area where one of the goals is to solve problems. So if you have a better mind or more experience or more points of view, isn't it easier for you to solve the problem? The innovation is more ideal there. Based on the experience, before I talked about international teams, we can see the results. We see people from different countries. We see that difference. Let's focus on the gender. This is what we are talking about. In the teams I have seen, women, for instance, with greater capability of analysis, goes more into details, value more different scenarios, makes more long-term decisions, for instance. Men that I have had men that are very able to make decisions rapidly. And what do you keep? Both, of course, because you need to have a detailed analysis is fantastic, but sometimes you don't have time. If somebody comes and with little information is able to make a decision, that's it. So I will have a team 50-50. And this is only one of the things. What Lola was saying before as well, the women have more empathy, more social, better communicator. The studies do say that. I'm not saying it. They consume more information. They have more interaction with other companies, with other organizations, and I believe that it is very important. What do you think that there should be women in technology, not only concerning equality, but also the concept of progress? What are we losing, or if we aren't there? Well, I'm going to give you an example. I believe that the lack of women in executive jobs, many women lose business opportunities. And the other day, I felt totally identified because I gave an example. When I drive to my car, I always have my bag. And today, the larger the better, because everything has a room in it. The first thing you do is you throw directly the bag on the seat close to the pilot. So it is bothering everywhere. And it's true that in my car I have 3 gaps full, 3 coffees, 3 Cokes and all the rest. I don't eat or drink in the car. If I had a model of car for a place for my bag, it would be fantastic. Maybe in the sector of the automotive led mainly by men, they have not gone through that experience. They don't see that need, and they lose that business opportunity that maybe is opening for us women. In order to summarize, for me, what I said before, man and woman are different. We are different. Yes, so the woman, for the sake of being a woman, contributes with an added value that, generally speaking, the man can't. And vice versa. The man gives a value added that generally the woman can't give. So the key of the success is to have that parity. It's hard. We are not going to reach that 50-50 yet. But I believe that the world, technology, the companies are losing a lot for not having the woman. And now two conflictive issues. But obviously when we talk about women in science, technology and innovation, we have to talk about it. Today it's a very important date. Let's go with the wage gap. According to the last data of Eurostat, from the salary gap in Spain makes that women work for free 55 days a year. This has been published by Eurostat, 3 days more than the previous year. According to that average, from tomorrow on, 7th of November, women, we are working for free. Apart from the systemic reasons that are manifold, and it's not the purpose of this panel of talking about it. It's an important issue for education. The girls and women, they are taught to the fact of speaking of money is not the right thing to do. At that respect, today there are many salaries that are negotiated. It's fundamental to make women able to do that in this field. Mercedes, what do you think? The salary gap, we haven't yet dared to touch it because it's so delicate, especially within sectors as the energy sector, that we haven't entered in it as of today. We are waiting for the companies to trust us more in order to make this sort of analysis. But I wanted to go to the data of the 55 days. And let's reflect at the other way around. When I saw the news, I called my friends, and I said I was horrified, but I was realizing what is happening. Think about it. How many hours do I work more already? Women make 2-3 more hours a day that are non-paid. That means this is pre-assumed. You tell somebody and they say, well, I'm already used to doing that. Working hours, non-paid working hours. But if we think about it from the other angle or viewpoint, when I told my friends, they also gave me right. If all men here, you leave your job and you go on holiday wherever you wish, you would earn as much as we, and that's unfair. It's unfair that you can do what you want during the coming 2 months, and that when you come back, we are in the same salary. And this makes me really reflect upon it in the inverse direction. Reading studies on this topic, and we haven't thought about that in IMNR yet. We talk very much about the fact that in reality, and this is the typical excuse, in some places it's the excuse and in the other one they quantify it. In reality, this is not so. As women, as you said before, we have entered later in the labor market. There are still not so many women in executive jobs as men. We can't compare directly the gap because they have higher salaries, and women, we ask for reduced working days. This is taken into account within these 55 days at any rate. And that women also choose less qualified jobs in order to have more time to go home with our children, etc. So there are a series of excuses that do exist. Pricewaterhouse this year has quantified these excuses in 2%. If we have 15% now, we will go to 13-12% that quoted by the minister. The gap exists, but what can we do about it in order to face this type of circumstances or situations? The first thing, and you will maybe give me right, that we have salary tables and charts in public administration and the civil servants. Well, by law, the salary is according to different categories. Nobody is asking if it's a man or a woman. So this should be transferred to other settings as well. I don't see it. This is the minimum thing that we can demand in the labor market. Transfer it to the private sector as well. And what is happening? Because this is even illegal, I suppose, and we should denounce it. The private companies here, we have our CEO in ABB. I look at him, but I have to foster. I have the people who work hard are going to earn, but the same job, different salary. That's incredible. I have a solution, because a bonus program with clearly defined KPIs is rewarding those merits, and it's not associated to the fact if it's a woman or a man. It's a program that defines if that person deserves to earn a little bit more than the colleague in the same job because she has done something that seemed impossible. That situation can be equalized without needing to not doing it transparently. So there is still a path in order to work and to try to break that gap. And from IMNR, personally, we want to study and we want to know more in detail why, everything that is behind the situation, and propose measures. The auditing of the companies, if this is really so, it is true that equal job, different salary, it's very serious, it's very discriminatory. And then and we have to fight for it, and this is also very important. Very briefly, Mercedes, because we haven't got more time. 2 seconds. If we fight for it or not. We are not fighting for it. This is not said based on any study, I know, because I mentioned that to Susanna in my boyfriend and myself, same sector, same age. He knows what his colleague, his friends what the salary of his friends are, but I don't. It's not that it's more opaque in that company. She knows that, and I don't. Men ask, and we don't. At least empirically, based on my experience, we don't do that. What do I advise? And these are just 2 seconds. Please, you have to make you valid. If you are called for another job, go to the interviews. Are you happy where you are? Yes, but in the interviews, your eyes are it's going to be an eye-opener. You're going to know what you are worth, and you will be able to defend it before you're responsible until we don't reach the place that we have to reach. I would like to add something. As an advice in those negotiations, Patricia was mentioning this the other day, there is a study that says that women with equal capacity to a man, if we have a requirement in a company is not, we self-assess us inferiorly than men always. We have to know what we are worth. We have to believe it. We have to show it because we have that talent, and this has to be remunerated. Fortunately, I haven't gone through that discrimination, but I know that it exists, and we have to fight in order to put an end to it. Well, thank you very much to the 3 of you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. The work-life balance we haven't been able to talk about it, but if you could come back to that girl that you were that was dreaming, building pyramids and being important, or inventing the progress of the future, what advice would you tell them? Mine is very short. Nobody can tell you what you can or cannot do. Thank you very much. Aspire, always higher. And I would say that she always have to keep on fighting, although she believes she can't. You can always keep on fighting. If you want, you can, and with one single goal in mind, to be happy. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias a nuestra...
Thank you to our speakers and Susanna in presenting this round table. I believe that they talked about this, and they 3 show that the equation is possible if we join determination, a lot of work, and a purpose. I think that they are the palpable example that when all this comes together, at the end we can do what you want and be happy as well. And this is the case of the 3 of them. And one very important thing that they've said, in the way to equality, we have to be together, men and women. It's a path that we walk together hand in hand, or otherwise we don't reach too long. We go now to the next scientist that I would like to introduce to you now. She's Maria Blasco. Many of you know her probably. She's the director of all of those that we have introduced here, one of the most well-known, the director of the National Center of Oncological Research. She In her professional life, she has received many awards, but she's a defender of equality. She wants, she says we have to adopt measures. We can't keep on losing talent, and we have to fight against the powerful gender stereotypes that do exist. From her research center, she does this work. She gives visibility to women, and she encourages them insistently. We have been able to talk with her about it. She encourages them, and she asks them to be more ambitious, something that Lola also said. The work of Blasco is very well known by our next speaker, and she's the one who is going to offer the next inspiring talk. They come by the hand of an expert that knows very well the situation of women in Spanish research, because she's director of the Health Institute Carlos III. She's Raquel Llotti. Ambassador, Secretary of State, General Director of the Telefónica Foundation. The first thing I have to say, talking about capacity and feel able to do something, is that I had never been invited to give an inspiring talk. Well, of course, we see that on the paper and said, oh, I'm cardiologist. With some slides, I can talk about cardiology. I can tell you the draft of the Spanish Strategy of Science and Technology for 2021-2027. But an inspiring talk, the first thing we say is, well, this is not for me. Well, this goes beyond my skills. Certainly, that in the room there are many men and women who have found themselves in that same situation. What one has to do there is to just make one step forward and say that, yes, this is going to be for me. And if it is not, I will learn something on the way. I just brought this piece of paper because I said, well, without slides and inspiring, well, just in case, here I bring some notes, just in case, for the next one without any piece of paper. I wanted to tell you that inspiration, we have already had it. It has really been very inspiring. I have learned many things, so it's everything has been done. If I can share some thoughts with you, well, I will go very happy home today. And I wanted to start remembering something that, well, the talk is what they asked me to talk about was the new paradigm, the change of paradigm in science and innovation. So the first thing I thought about doing is, what is a paradigm? And already in 1962, a philosopher and physicist, Thomas Kuhn, in a book entitled The Structure of the Scientific Revolutions, defined that changes in science do not take place in a linear fashion. They don't produce by the accumulation of observations and discoveries, but they are produced by a change of paradigm that give rise to a revolution. And this is what we are talking about. A paradigm, what it is it's a set of ideas, of theories, of parameters that we consider a truth, and around which we do build all those things that we call science. These are coordinates that tell us that it's the environment of intellectual possibilities that we are facing. And this is very useful because this gives us some guidelines. But at the same time, it has some dangers, because everything that is an alternative hypothesis that can be disruptive, the paradigm, the old paradigm in this case, prevents those ideas from evolving. So if we do accept the idea that the change in science and also in society is revolutionary, we will have to agree upon, among all of us, that progress can't be linked to being conservative, to consider that what is ours, what we consider real, what we consider a truth, is like that and can't be different. Because when a paradigm changes, this happens because mistakes have been identified and situations have been identified where that whole set of theoretical assumptions doesn't give an answer to facts that we are observing and that are true. But in order to observe those facts, very often we need to be bold and be courageous, because these are not external facts only. These are also facts that do concern us directly, that make us talk to ourselves and reflect and consider that we are observing things in nature and in ourselves that do not adjust or fit with the mode of doing things, the way of making science, or the way of behaving in society. And it's the accumulation of failures, of what is called abnormalities, what makes that a process starts, is triggered, that in a short lapse of time gives rise to a radical change. In this case, a radical change of making science. Well, in this sense, we understand very easily that gender inequality in the academic world and in the field of research is an abnormality. It's an enormous abnormality, because it's attacking any intellectual basic principle, any ethical principle. And as has been mentioned here, and many data have been given as well, it goes against any economic productivity principle. So in view of this accumulation of abnormalities, we have no other answer than a change of model. Because it's quite interesting to verify how the different roles that have been occupied by women, and more specifically the scarce participation she has had in science, has been supported with scientific theories, with the wrong theories, theories that were neurobiological and sociological, that feed a stereotype that makes us think that the place of women is not in science. And these have been theories made throughout centuries or years, centuries, in the setting of a scientific paradigm that has been designed by men and for men. Well, so that it's that moment we talked about feminist economy, and now it's a moment for this feminist science. Apart from feminist science, what this means is, what it doesn't mean is to open spaces so that in the midst of scientific organizations and academic organizations, women fight for their rights. This is not so.
What feminist science involves or implies is to involve society at large, both men and women, to achieve effective inclusion in the field of science, but from an integrative point of view. Together with feminist awareness, I think we should talk about two other correlated things that are part of a paradigm of science. The first one is also very obvious. Science is no longer something that depends on geniuses, scientists who work isolated in a lab, and now it's become something that has to do with human interaction, with teams, with multidisciplinarity, the frontier of knowledge. And the more diverse teams are, from a cultural, gender, and other points of view, the more diverse teams are, scientific production and its impact on society will be greater. It's an integrative force. And there's another thing that I want to share with you. Science embraces innovation in order to transform the life of people. And it becomes applied science, all kinds of sciences, always thinking about the human goal, a humanistic type of science, where human beings, well, patients or citizens, who can be patients, become the center, and science is the engine to promote sustainable development for all humankind. We can all include it under the concept of humanistic science, an old paradigm where it's hard to incorporate the human and social nature of science in something that goes beyond disciplines or gender. So feminist science, integrative science, humanistic science, which attempts to find an answer to the values, expectations, and values of society. And this is what the new European Framework Program says, which includes all the scientific disciplines. And I spoke about values because values are the fundamental pillar that progress is based on, that institutions and people are based on, is the link that brings people together with their organization and their mission, and they work together for the sake of society. And ethical values are the ones that indicate what we should do in a fair society, in responsible science. So in a society where men and women don't have equal opportunities, where consciously or unconsciously we have biases, both men and women, biases towards women, that makes this society not be fair. So when we talk about an old reactionary discourse where feminism is related to a supremacist idea of women over men, well, I don't think it should be seen like that. It's a moral positioning that should be shared by men and women because it's there for the whole of society. So it's not exclusive. The aim is to be inclusive. The goal is for the principles of the Enlightenment, equality, conceived as equal opportunities during Enlightenment, and freedom, liberty should be for all humankind, and humankind obviously includes women. So that's feminism. And if the ethical argument were not enough, and it happens, we live in a market economy where values, ethics do not always fit with economic interests. That is a fact. And we live in a scientific world where extreme competition between groups and the way we evaluate excellence means that it's difficult to do what's fair. We've already heard a lot of thoughts that show that inclusive science is more productive, just as it is in business. There's no doubt about it. What's fair is productive. So you don't need any further arguments. We have plenty of arguments in favor. We've been collecting arguments for decades. The previous speaker said this. The time is now. So what do we need to do? I'd like to say that what we need to do is manage change well. And in the theory of change management, well, there are two theories, two opposing theories that can be unified. The first theory is the theory of the critical mass, a theory where for a long time we have considered, academic institutions have considered, that once a certain percentage of women were reached in responsibility positions, once that critical mass was achieved, there would be a chain reaction that would create a more inclusive environment. And there would be no way back, no turning back. This is a very interesting concept that comes from atomic and particle science, chain reaction, which may be very familiar for scientists. But when it comes to sociological changes, reality shows that it doesn't work like this. This hasn't worked. Or at least it has not achieved the results we expected. It may be interesting, but it cannot be the complete answer. And together with this theory, there's another one, which is that of the key actors, the key players, or the critical ones. Theory of critical players says that change comes from people, both men and women, who are committed and who have the power. Many of you have the commitment and the power, both individual or collective, of being able to create around you an inclusive environment, an environment where things can true, where equality can be a reality. So now I'd like to talk to you, and each of you should consider
representa como actor crítico.
The role you play as a critical player, because this concept goes way beyond hierarchical responsibility in an organization, in a company.
El concepto de liderazgo transformador va más allá y va.
The concept of transforming leadership is applied at all levels to the capacity that each person have to influence the people that they relate to. So change can start there. Each and every one of you can create that change. So I would invite you to think about 4 elements where the key players articulate their strategy. First, you have to make a reflection, and then you have to develop a strategy. So I will talk about reflection and then strategy. Reflection means 2 things. It requires being brave but also humble. We're not talking about the others, we're talking about ourselves, because all of us have biases and we project them on our near environment. And there's a special message here for men in the audience, an even more difficult exercise, which is to recognize that in situations that you see natural, there's a situation of privilege. And it's very difficult to perceive for you, because when you are in a situation of privilege, you think it's normal and natural. Having said this, let's go to action. And there are 4 elements here. First, we have to consider what we say, what kind of message we convey to our environment. Secondly, what are we doing every day in our work environment, in our teams, with our families. Next, you need to know what are our priorities, especially when we call our team to action. There are certain priorities, and equality should be on top. And finally, how we evaluate how much progress we've made so that we won't fall into pessimism. And we have to recognize what we have achieved and establish new goals. And I will conclude talking about the role of institutions. As the director of the Carlos III Health Institute, which you know is part of the Ministry of Education, but also the Ministry of Health, we institutions have the same responsibility as you do, as key actors. The only difference is that we have more power, and the more power, the higher the responsibility. But the elements are the same. The elements are, number one, what it is we say, what messages we convey, what actions, and amongst actions we include laws and regulations, how we establish priorities in the Spanish system, and here our institute is an evaluating agency that evaluates research projects and decide whether to finance them or not. And here the gender perspective is key as well. So I will conclude on a positive note. I think we've achieved a lot. We're amidst a change of paradigm. This is a historical moment. We may continue to face resistance. Right when the model and the paradigm is changing, voices from the past come and want to maintain the status quo. They feel they've been the object of aggression. But change is unstoppable. And as Eleanor Roosevelt used to say, the future is for those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. So, dear friends, the future belongs to all of us, both men and women.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. I think we all go into the paradigm. The place of the woman is where she wants and defines. And we come to the end with our scientists now. The next one from Valencia is award raid on Jaime I, one of the most prestigious awards in research. She changed the idea, prevalent idea that aging only happens gradually. It's La Pura Muñoz, and she's a great scientist and a great person. And with her, we give the floor to the last intervention this afternoon. We do that with the Secretary of State of Research, Development and Innovation, Ángeles Eras Caballero. Good night. Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I thank the organizers, Ambassador Foundation Telefónica, and it's a pleasure because I'm here from the very beginning, and I've heard absolutely all the different speakers, excellent speakers. Raquel, brilliant as always. And now I have to close this session. We are all tired, so I have to be very brief, with very clear-cut messages and try to make a summary. But the first thing I'm going to say is that out of all the speakers, I'm the eldest. I will turn 64 next month. And that's it. As simple as that. And I'm a scientist, and now I'm Secretary of State of Universities, Research, Development, Innovation. And I have, as has been very rightly said by Raquel, the responsibility and the power and the responsibility that always go together, of being able to act in the R&D system. Although I have had little time, let's see if I can have more. I have the responsibility and the power of being able to influence and being able to change some situations in the R&D system so that science is inclusive, and so that we will be in a society, more diverse society, including science. This is how it is. In this topic of today, the gender topic, of course, when I arrived, I knew a lot of feminism. I have always been feminist. I have been a fighter just for the sake of being in science at the same level as men, and to be in science was only based on the capacities and the skills as person, not something else. It has not always been easy, but I recognize that there have been great advances, but it's still a lot to do. So the first thing we did in the ministry was to try to, in a project of urgent measures, in order to gain efficiency in the scientific system that really requires those measures, apart from requiring a budget as well, what we did was to establish that according with the royal decree and approved in our parliament unanimously with all the political parties, groups, they considered the maternity time and child breeding in the CV of each researcher. The scientists, we are being assessed continuously for different projects in order to have money for projects, in order to be able to obtain media for research, means for research. I like that. That's how we can go ahead and advance, and that's what it's all about. But in those assessments, and maternity, we haven't mentioned that here today, by the way, and the caring for the children, generally, and until now, falls mostly on women, on the woman in the house, and we need mothers as scientists and fathers as scientists. We all need children, so we have to protect or adopting a positive action measure so that the time a woman freely, a scientist, chooses to have children, that time should not be assessed that year or until the 36 months of care. They don't take that into account as other colleagues that are not having any children. This is common sense. That's what we have done. We have created an observatory that has the same name as this meeting. We created it last year in a decree of the 23rd of November 2018, an observatory that is called Women, Science and Innovation, because in fact research is necessary, science is necessary, but it's also necessary that that knowledge generated by science is transferred and reaches and flows to the companies and to society at large for the welfare of all. And this is also something that all political parties have to agree upon, because what we all want is that our country increases its economic potential and its potential for social welfare. In that observatory, the goals that we had, the main one was to create models of women to inspire the girls, as has been mentioned here quite often, with actions like this one that we've had here today, and also to be able to make that glass roof ceiling for scientific women so that we are able to break it. We haven't broken it yet because, and now I will give you the data that the minister talked about, Nadia Calviño, 28% of all the researchers worldwide are women. In Spain, we are 38%, but in the Europe 27, 33%. And if we go to innovation, to that knowledge generated that generates patent and rich and wealth, in Spain, 17% of patents in Europe are Spanish, as well, 17% have at least a co-author that is a woman. The European average in the Europe of 28 is only 9%. So we are not bad off. We have few patents, but men and women, and well, the authors of patents, we are at 17%. These are the data that exist, and this is what we want. We have been able to enrich, as I'm convinced that the societies or the companies or the research groups, we have been able to do that with diversity. They are wealthier, they are more enriched with the multidisciplinarity and with the diversity. Everything that we do is enriched, and also the whole organism is enriched. Another thing that we've done in the observatory, and I tell you this as an anecdote, but it has some meaning. Last year we called the National Prizes for Research. They had very little. They had little money, so they had been a few years without calling them. But the scientists who are not moving for the sake of money, we don't do that. Well, the scientists had to become visible in society, although they only had 30,000 euros as an award. And the jury met, and it was solved. And the 5 awards that were given in the different areas of knowledge, all were men. Excellent scientists, yes, but all men. You can't imagine that day how the Secretary of State was, oh, well, it can't be like that. Well. So then, the immediate reaction to see how many requests, what was the percentage of women who had requested that, and how many men. Without data and without results, we can't do anything, just talk without knowing. Well, the data were, we have had 13% applications that presented one researcher who was a woman, the rest were men. Logically, if you have just 13% of requests, logically, well, that all are male, it enters within what is considered normal. And we hadn't yet created the observatory. Now we have created, we have called again for these national awards in the other 5 areas of knowledge, complementary to the previous ones. And now, as a president of this observatory, myself, well, we couldn't force any institution nor any group of friends, well, yes, scientific friends or friends in a society or a foundation, to present women researchers. We couldn't force anyone because it was not written in the call, but in a very friendly manner and very inspiring manner, I wrote a letter to all the universities and all the research centers as president of the observatory, saying that, well, that there were many women that had to look around, because we were convinced that in their institutions there were many very valuable women, and with a CV that probably even better than some of the men. What happens is that the women, it is true, and I know that, we just go a step back. The result was this year we've had 33% of requests from women. We have increased by 20% from one year to another. It's not like they have grown like mushrooms, because these are CVs of senior researchers. It's that they have looked with other eyes, all this. From the observatory, we inspire them conveniently. So in this case, what has happened? Out of the 5 awards, 3 are for women. One of them, we've seen her here, Ángela Nieto, the first one that you have shown the picture of. So this is another option. And what happens with innovation? What happens with innovation that is not non-inclusive? But what happens with innovation in our country? How many companies have we got? How does this knowledge reach, that is generated in the university and the centers of research, how does it reach the companies? How fluid is this relationship? Well, here we have for a much longer talk. But simply I have to say that we also have innovative women, and we don't know. So one initiative that we have implemented in the observatory is the first study, and when I say the comprehensive, I refer to the whole of Spain, to all the different types of innovative companies and enterprises, a comprehensive study of innovative women. How many women are daring to create companies, innovative companies, and transfer that knowledge that we have? Because we haven't got any data. There are sporadic results here and there, and very scattered, and this is indispensable to have for us the map of results in order to make the diagnosis and then start working with these ideas and go ahead. But another good data with respect to innovative women or scientist women, from the CDTI, that is the Center, is an funding agency of innovation, the Center of Technical and Industrial Development, for those of you who don't know it. They give grants to innovative companies, and from July till now, when we have started counting the women, we started counting how many companies were created by women, how many companies where the women were responsible, the gender indicator. Good surprise that we found is that from the innovative companies that create employment in Spain, the highest levels of that work, 47%, are made out of women. These are doctors, because here we talk about innovation data. I don't know what they earn. I don't know what they earn in each company, but it's a good data. As in the more lower employments, the percentages are quite varied. Here, in the quality employments and of high-tech employments, these are the data. It is true that innovation is mainstreamed, and we can innovate in many different branches of the economic sector and branches of the areas of knowledge as well. But it is also true that in the one that we are dealing with here today, in the STEM, the reality is that women, the girls mainly, study less. 24% of young people, and these are data from 2017, that reach our universities are girls. No, sorry, are girls for these engineering careers. They need examples, of course, and they need examples in a society of welfare, as all countries are in our environment in the first world. I believe that they need, and this is what I launched for you to discuss about it, they need models of entrepreneurs, women who are scientists, and entrepreneurs who are professional and good, but at the same time have and offer an image of normality. That for the girls and boys in this society right now, where everything is very comfortable, we shouldn't seem strange people that only study and continuously. They need models of women, professional women, scientists, engineers, doctors, good professionals, but at the same time normal people that we find on our daily life, and we find them in the street, and we talk with them. We need that, and I leave it there for you to think and see if among all of us, I'm convinced that we will be able to obtain a society that will be much better, more inclusive, because as Raquel said, Jyoti, this can't be stopped any longer. Would we like to change, to change half of our wealth? No, we wouldn't. The country is the same. Do they want to lose the half of their wealth? Well, let's all go together so that we can reach that goal. Thank you very much, Secretary of State. We have to look with other eyes. We in the Agencia EFE, we also do that. We have a project that is called Feminist that I'm the director of, and we work for that. The colleague who is chairing that department, Noemi Gomez, said she's convinced, fully convinced about all this, and she said, from now on, every time that we count, that we tell that an exoplanet has been discovered, when we illustrate the news, let's see, because certainly, probably, the research team is chaired by a man, but if we look in the team of that great man, probably there will be very many great women working with him. So since 1 year we tried to look for the second picture, because they are there, although they do not appear in the first picture, but in the second one they are. And at the end, that's why the teams advance so much. We conclude here. Thank you for being with us. Thanks to the speakers and the sponsors, Telefónica Foundation, for hosting us in this fantastic space. I'm going to ask the speakers now to come to have the picture taken. I invite you all to come to the cocktail that is going to be served now. Thank you very much.